Oh, hey everyone. So recently I was talking to a Patreon and he had asked me if I would do a comparison of some different gear and see how it looked under night vision. So today we'll be taking a look at various plate carriers from companies such as HRT, Crye, Defense Mechanisms, Agilite, and others, while under NVGs. And then we'll settle this idea of what camo pattern works best and why it may not matter. So first off, I'm going to tell you I'm pretty skeptical that this test matters at all. There's a whole bunch of conversations, mostly over at stupid-ass Reddit, about how gear glowing under NVGs is some sort of huge issue, and I think it's a bunch of baloney, but hey, we're here, let's test it. And I'll tell you now that my skepticism comes from how our eyes see compared to how night vision sees light and colors. And I'll tell you what, I actually thought really hard about doing a whole series on how different things look under night vision, like pants and backpacks and all those things. But I'll be honest, after doing this video, it seems pointless. So let me explain. So to our naked eyes, we have two very different color plate carriers here. They look very different. But under night vision, we're only going to see varying shades of one single color. And you may have seen those two popular colors with the green and white phosphorus in night vision. Green is actually the easiest wavelength for the human eye to see. Like with the human eye, a tiny little speck of green will just jump out at you and it's really easy to see. But then with white phosphorus, like what we have, this is the color that actually allows the eye to see the most differing shades of color. But we don't need to pick up a red dot or anything, so the green really isn't all that useful. The white is a lot better and the one we want to use, so we can have more varying shades of that single color. But this is where the conversation gets a little bit silly. And that's because you really need to first forget about comparing color, as all we're doing with a single color like night vision is comparing contrast. But it gets even trickier than just having high contrast fabrics. You know what? I've decided it'll just be easier if we explain as I go. So today I'm going to be showing you all the plate carriers in the daytime first, then we'll show them at night without the IR on, then we'll add on the IR light on our PVS 14s, and then finally we'll put the carriers out a bit further and use our Steiner D-Ball D2 to illuminate them and see how they do. Some foreshadowing, it makes a mess of things. All right, and then we'll finish up and talk about all the results. But let's just hurry up and get to it, and let's start now with that daytime view. First, here we have all of our plate carriers in the daytime. I won't waste a ton of time here, but this is so you can see how each carrier looks in normal daylight. Starting from the left, we have our HRT RAC Multicam. And remember now, we have a whole bunch of these carriers that share the same color pattern, but then actually show up very differently under NVGs due to the various difference in fabric and dyes. Remember though as we go, contrast, not color. Continuing down the line, we have our Defense Mechanisms MEPC and Multicam Tropic, followed by our Agilite K19 and Multicam Black. Pause for a moment. I was told that Multicam Black does the best in the dark. So we came up with a very special test to test all of these in the dark. Let's see how it does. And I don't think camel color makes a single lick of difference. It's black. Everything is black. Did somebody actually say that? Back to our testing, we have the Crye SPC with the Spiritus Systems MK4 Placard, both in multicam. And pay attention to this one because they have the same color pattern, but they have very different fabrics and dyes, so they're actually going to show up a little bit differently. Moving down, we then have the Javlin Concepts A-Jac, again in multicam, and then we have the LAPG Low Vis carrier in Coyote. This one does some weird stuff in night vision. And then in the last spot, I threw in a chest rig with the Tracer Tactical Modular Chest Rig in the MOAB colors. Ugh, and I already know, a ton of you are going to be like, but what about this random obscure color pattern used by this YouTuber I saw on YouTube? And it doesn't really matter, but it's not a simple answer but I think you'll understand after we finish the IR testing portion of all this. So let's start now and we'll look at all the carriers under night vision during the daytime with our PVS-14 caps on. Here you can finally see what I'm saying as each carrier loses all coloring and just becomes different shades of contrast from black to that full white phosphorus. I guess it's like a whitish, bluish, whatever color. The HRT looks alright and you can make out a bit of the multicam still. The defense mechanism just looks like it's all one color with the shoulder pad standing out just a bit. And then there's the K19, no longer multicam black, but the same color as the defense mechanisms. But have you noticed the contrast, particularly against the mags, the buckles, and like the tubes connectors? And as you can see, the color pattern really isn't doing anything. Moving to our Crye SPC, we see an odd thing where this carrier is actually fairly bright in comparison. And you're beginning to see how the contrast between the mags and the carrier is a far bigger issue. Next onto the Javlin Concepts A-Jac, we see the same multicam pattern as the Crye SPC, but the fabric is far more muted, but with the same contrast problems to the mag as on the Crye SPC. Then we see the LAPG Gear Low Vis carrier and the Coyote is completely gone, and this one definitely glows, but it's the contrast to the shoulder pad that catches your eye more than the glowing. And then we round out with the Tracer Tactical with the now invisible MOAB pattern. Alright, so let's wait it out till dark, and then we can actually see how these look when I remove the caps on the PVS-14, and we can see them under some more natural light. Here at night, we don't see much difference from our original daytime view. Much of what we noted in terms of color and visible patterns remains exactly the same. I'll make sure to label above each plate carrier so you can see what each one is. And I'll just continue down the line. There's nothing really magical in comparison to what we saw previously. I got all the same notes and I don't see much besides some added clarity. But with night vision, you're likely going to use some sort of IR illuminator, right? So let's turn on the illuminator and see how these things do. Well, here's some interesting results. All the different bits of the HRT rack now light up a bit differently. But see, it's not the intensity or the glow or whatever dumb people say that makes it stand out. It's the contrast between the different materials used on the plate carrier. Moving to the defense mechanisms MEPC, we see the same issue. The amount the fabric glows really is nothing compared to the contrast to the different equipment. The previously invisible K19 is suddenly this instantly recognizable plate carrier due to the visibility of the various different bits of fabric and connector items on the carrier. See, the contrast between items is a way bigger problem, not the color or hue of the fabric. And stop saying to use multicam black at night. It's ridiculous. Moving back, again we see the Crye SPC is a lot brighter than I would have expected. The Spiritus MK4 patches glow, but they don't contrast, making them blend in better, but all the other items contrast so bad to one another, the whole carrier stands out like a sore thumb. Keeping going, the Javlin Concepts A-Jac still does a great job in terms of color hue, but as we keep commenting, the color of the fabric is a non-issue compared to the contrast to the mags. The LAPG Gear Low Vis is still ultra bright under IR and further highlights the issues with the contrasting shoulder materials. And then we finish up with our Tracer Tactical that actually has some pretty good color uniformity that really doesn't matter at all once you add the mags in. But I'll be honest, all these tests seem so stupid. Like, if someone was 5 feet away from me, who cares if their gear is bright? I already know they're here because they're 5 feet away and all their gear is contrasting all over the place. So let's repeat this test at distance, and I'll put everything up on my deck so we're about 20 feet away from all the plate carriers. Instantly from this distance, we start to see whatever IR glow there was that the latest Reddit moron was whining about is no longer an issue. They all make a varying contrast to the grass, and all the other gear and bits give you away anyway. and it looks super easy to see the carriers. None of them really blend in at all under IR. And maybe you're starting to see why I don't see a point in doing much more of this. But I'll continue showing it from my deck so you can get an idea of what it looks like and how you'd look with all your gear and crap under IR. But Walsh, you may say with your neckbeard, what if I have my IR illuminator on the target? Yeah, wait till you see how dumb this is. So here we have our D-Ball D2 on high power, and now we have a new problem. The auto gating of the PVS 14s with the added brightness means the target is now invisible in the IR beam, but visible outside of it. So if you were being aimed at with the light, it would be impossible to see you, the complete reverse of what you would expect. God, night vision just hurts my brain. All right, let's try that again with the brightness toned down and the cone of the light actually widened out a good bit more. Now, apologies as I have to keep adjusting my camera here, but as you can see, this is the meat and potato setting where we don't have too much illumination and we can highlight the entire area. But as we move from one side to the next, it's not the brightness of the fabric that's standing out. It's the contrast to the various different materials and how they reflect the IR light differently. And to be completely honest, every single one of the carriers is extremely easy to see. And yeah, somebody may argue that I may need to actually do this test and be further away. And yeah, I agree. But then from way out there, the issue of brighter fabrics becomes even less of an issue. So I think this test is stupid. The color and type of camo makes absolutely no difference as Multicam Black, Multicam Tropic, and regular Multicam all look completely identical. The only bit making any difference is the dye and fabric itself. And I'll even say I think it's almost entirely the dye because the Crye SPC and the Javlin concepts seem to be using the exact same materials but then showing up a bit differently. And I'm betting most of these other carriers are just using Cordura, but the dyes are making them highlight in very different ways. But ultimately, the hue of the dye doesn't matter one lick. It's the contrast. The varying colors between your mags and your comm gear and all of your different stuff and interconnecting bits are going to give you away way faster than the hue of the fabric. And I find it more than just a little bit odd that when you see these tests online, they're almost always done from like 3 feet away, when you'd already see that person at 3 feet away and the hue matters pretty much zero as you start to increase in distance. This whole thing reeks of a bad marketing gimmick, and I implore you not to invest too much time or energy into the hue of fabrics under night vision. But it's the internet and people freak out over the silliest nonsense, so I am sure you're gonna make me do more of these. I mean, we do have packs and pants and a ton more nonsense we could do, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If you wanna hide from night vision, just get like a poncho or one like uniform fabric over you. Anyway though, I hope this video was useful in your purchasing decisions. If you're trying to figure out what to use under night vision, now you can stop caring about it. But I do want to say thanks to all of our Patreon supporters and our YouTube members. You're the ones that make all this possible, and we get all this cool gear to test all this stuff and test out these nonsense theories. And I want to say thanks to everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes. Comment down below what you think about using Multicam Black in the dark. All right, everyone, we'll shout. Oh yeah, the Multicam Black is definitely harder to see with your eyes closed.